Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O Podcast, and happy Careers Friday, everybody. Of course, we are celebrating Industrial Water Week each and every day this week. Unfortunately, this is the final day. I say unfortunately, but it's also my favorite day because this helps us celebrate the most wonderful industry in the entire world, industrial water treatment. Now, I've hoped that you have listened to each and every episode this week. If you haven't, maybe that's how you celebrate today. We did a brand new episode each and every day this week, celebrating all of the different themes for Industrial Water Week. If you need a reminder, that was Pre-Treatment Monday, Boiler Tuesday, Cooling Wednesday, Wastewater Thursday, and Careers Friday. And we, each and every year, try to make this the place you come to celebrate Industrial Water Week and celebrate you being in the industrial water treatment industry. Of course, we have a brand new episode for you on the regular basis each and every Friday, but this week is special. Our free gift to you is we had an episode each and every day this week. And I want to send a shout out to my team because I want you to know that we do the same amount of work for our weekly episodes that we did each and every day this week. So my team, through my ask, hey, can we do this for the Scaling Up Nation? And they graciously said yes. They did a month's worth of work that is all getting used up in a week. But it is so worth it because it is the best week of the year. It is Industrial Water Week. And we, of course, celebrate Industrial Water Week the first full week of every October. So that means next year, we're going to start celebrating October 6th through 10th. That's going to be Industrial Water Week 2025, but don't start celebrating that yet. Don't get ready for that yet. We are still in Industrial Water Week for 2024. And as I mentioned, it is all about careers. And one of my favorite calls to actions was one that James McDonald did on one of his segments. And he said, take somebody who helped you within your career and send them a handwritten card. Nation, I sent 3 cards out and I received 10 back. I did not expect that. I'm not saying that to get another 10 back, but you just don't know who you are inspiring. And that's the whole point of this. Let people know that somehow they have inspired you in this industry. And because of that, you just want to let them know. Don't want to ask anything of them. Just let them know that they helped with your career. And it is just amazing what a gift like that does. I have a drawer that has thank you cards in it that people have sent me. And whenever I'm thinking that I'm having a rough day, whenever I'm thinking, Trace, you've got so much going on, how are you going to find time to do this podcast? I open that drawer and I think it's not just me putting content out there. It is the community that this podcast has created that we are all a part of because we have a career in this industry, that we listen to this podcast, and that we love this industry. And of course, that community is called the Scaling Up Nation. The Scaling Up Nation is one of my favorite things to talk about. Earlier this year, I was recognized with the Innovation Award by the Association of Water Technologies for this podcast. Nation, so many people came to me and said, you needed to do a podcast. It was not my original idea. And then one weekend, I figured out how to cobble together the world's worst first episode ever put down into the cloud. And it has become what you are hearing today. It has become one of my favorite activities, and it has become the catalyst for a community that we call the Scaling Up Nation. So many people, including myself, have let others know that they don't feel alone when they're out there going to account to account. They're listening to this podcast. They hear my voice, they hear the guest's voice, and they know not only are we doing something similar to what they're doing out in the field, they know that thousands of people are listening to that same podcast that do the same thing that we do. And we might not be in the same room together, but we're on the same planet together. We're listening together, and that creates a community. And that community transcends when you now go to a venue, some sort of conference, some sort of trade show, some sort of training. I have seen so many people walking together because they got to know each other because they listened to the podcast. That's one of the reasons I make sure I hand out pins at every conference that I go to. I call them pins. I actually meant to say buttons. And we've had a couple of different versions of buttons, and people told me they've collected all of them. And people will say, oh, I listened to that podcast. I haven't put my button on. Maybe I should. And then somebody else sees these two people walking down the hallway with the two buttons, and they're like, oh, I listen to that podcast too. And now there's a threesome that's walking around, and you entered that conference by yourself. Now you're not by yourself. You're within your community. You had one commonality that probably turned into 100 commonalities. And I just think that is amazing. So, Nation, thank you for embracing this podcast. Thank you for sharing it with people that might have thought they want to get into this industry. And they heard a couple of these episodes and they said, that's exactly what I want to do. Or maybe they said, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that with me. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So whatever it was, I am glad that you're sharing these episodes. You're reaching out to each other. You're using all the resources that we have. I've mentioned several times this week, if you go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to our resources pages, you can see all of our Legionella content. You can see all of our Industrial Water Week content. There's just so much free stuff for you to learn more out there. Maybe you want to learn more about a particular topic. You can search that topic in our search bar, and all those episodes will come up. I have been told, and I've done it myself, I'll search for a topic, and the first 5 things that come up in Google are the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Well, folks, those are great for you. I've already covered that, so I'm looking for something new. So I've got to search down maybe 6 or 7. But if you're looking for something, it's just so cool that we are so easily referenced out there. And there are so many people out there that are in our industry that don't know about this podcast. So it's my ask on this Careers Friday that you help me find those individuals so we can motivate them on a weekly basis. And another ask that I have of you, so let's see, I've asked you to send a thank you card to a mentor. I've asked you if you will let people know about this podcast. And I'm also going to ask if you would send your pictures to hashtag Industrial Water Week or IWW24, where you are with your team, where you're with your mentor, where you're taking a picture of the cake that you are celebrating with your team or customer this week. It's always our most hashtag day, and I love seeing all the pictures that are out there. I love seeing all the members of the Scaling Up Nation, because that's where we all come together. And Nation, doing this podcast has become part of my career that I never knew existed when I got into it. So I want to thank everybody for listening to it and continuing to listen to it because I absolutely love doing it. And I had no idea that this was where my job was going to take me. When my father first had me doing titrations on the kitchen table when I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old. And I would say, Dad, that was 25 drops that it took to turn this color to that color. And yeah, he didn't have me do math. He just had me count drops. So that was how I started out. Now I just absolutely love this industry and I love being the host of this podcast. Now, as you know, each and every day this week, we've been asking some of our friends of the Scaling Up Nation to stop by and tell us what they love about Industrial Water Week and water treatment.
Happy Careers Friday, Scaling Up Nation. My name is Dragan Stavic and I'm the CEO of KWR Water Research Institute in the Netherlands. And I'm also a professor of hydroinformatics at the University of Exeter in the UK. I got into the water industry by chance. It wasn't at all planned, but at the university, I found out more about the water and water management, and I learned to love it. But if I wanted to encourage, and I really want you to consider a career in water and water treatment, I would say that you could enter the water sector at various levels. Even with a high school, you can go into your local water company and find out what they do. They will be open to that, trust me. You can go to your local college and find out what courses they offer in the water area, hydrology, hydraulics, water engineering, or so on. Or you can go to university and find out what are the prerequisites for you to get that type of education. And again, when I started, I wanted to do engineering, but I didn't know what. And I suggest you go and talk to different people because people in the treatment will speak a different language from the people who are doing the pumps or the people who are actually doing the pipes. And you can also work in data. You can work with AI because one of my kind of expertise is application of AI in the water sector. So my suggestion is do it and do it today.
Dragan was such a fun guest. And like he said, do it today. Maybe you share this episode with somebody that's thinking about getting into the industry. That was episode 356 if you want to share the entire episode. And I just want to underscore, do it today. The best industry that is out there. And we're going to hear from another Scaling Up friend.
Happy Careers Friday, Scaling Up Nation. I'm Kalpana Solanki, President and CEO of the Environmental Operators Certification Program. I seriously think you should consider a career as an environmental operator. It's a career with purpose. You can work anywhere in the world. And what could be more purposeful than providing people with safe drinking water and wastewater management?
Kalpana, thanks for dropping by on Careers Friday. If you want to hear her full episode, that's episode 355. She is an outstanding representative of the industrial water community. Go ahead and follow her on social media. You'll be glad that you did because she is always out there at all the different events and you get to live vicariously through her because she is just great at posting social media. Well, Nation, that's not all of our visitors. We've got one more.
Happy Career Friday, Scaling Up Nation. My name is Blaine Nagao, CWT, and I'm with Dober Chemical, specifically Smart Release Technology. I got in the water treatment industry by dumb luck. I was a manager at a computer company called CompUSA in Arlington, Texas, and one of my customers was a gentleman named Steve Dumler. We've lost Steve a few years ago. He was a wonderful guy. He walked in my store, and Steve was the guy, for people that do know him, know that I want to talk to the manager. Not because something was wrong. He just felt like he always wanted to deal with the manager. So he always dealt with me. He loved computers. He had a habit, so to speak, for computers. And I got to become friends with Steve. So that blossomed to a friendship that went on for many years. I was taking some time off and Steve asked what I was doing. I said, hanging around the house. And Steve said, nope, you're going to come ride with me. We're going to go see some prisons. I said, yeah, that sounds like a ton of fun. He goes, no, seriously, come with me. I'm going to take you with me where we're going to go service in prisons. He had to go. That was a boiler customer back then. So he went in to the prison. I went in behind him, scared to death because it was my first time in prison. And all of a sudden he had a meeting he had to go to really quick. And this was probably our second or third unit we stopped at. And when he was at the meeting, I decided I was going to just copy what he did and use the color-coded little test instructions. And I ran all the tests. He came back and said, I'm going to run the test now. I said, I already done it. I'd already even jotted down some things that I noticed. And he said, you got to come do this. I said, no way. You've got money. You've got cars. You've got all this stuff. There must be something illegal about this. I'm not going to do this. Fast forward a few years, I was going to get transferred to California. And Steve used to call me all the time. He'd come visit me. I'd built a store in El Paso. And he'd always ended a call with, hey, I got this neat new car. Here's what it does. And by the way, you ready to come work yet? Well, when he got to that, I said, yes. He paused for a minute and said, really? And how much is that going to cost me? Fast forward a month, I was back in Dallas-Fort Worth working at ChemCal. So that's how I got in this industry. Dumb luck. Right place, right time. I think we can make more people aware of our industry by becoming more important to the process, to keeping ourselves front and center on technology. We need to take meetings at our accounts and let people besides the maintenance person know what we're doing for their facility, whether that's an environmental person, a safety person. If you can get in and see the plant manager, whatever, stay in front of it.
Well, Nation, that of course was Blaine from episode 367. Blaine and I have known each other for quite some time. And of course, we would never have met had it not been for industrial water treatment. If he'd not gotten in this industry his way, if I had not gotten in it my way, we would never have met. And I want to say I've known Blaine for probably almost 20 years. And how cool is that you can say you've had acquaintances that long? And Blaine and I have taught together. We presented on things together, and it's just been so cool to work with Blaine throughout the years. And Nation, this really is the career that keeps on giving. So many of my friends are in this industry. I would have never been in an area where I would have ever met them. And I can't imagine life without all of these friends, without all of these colleagues, without people that I can call when I see something that I've never seen before, without people that have experienced something and they share that experience with me so I don't have to experience it. In fact, that was the premise that I started the Rising Tide Mastermind so many years ago, and it has just become wildly successful. You know, if you want to learn more about the mastermind, it's scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. We've got a couple of spots open for a new group that we are starting. But folks, if the Rising Tide Mastermind is not right for you, that is perfectly fine. I do believe that you need to be in a group. And people that I talk with are not in any group at all. Whatever you're doing, life is too short and it's too darn difficult to do it alone. So whatever group it is that you're going to join, I urge you to join it. And if you're in the same field that I am, maybe the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you. Well, Nation, once again, if you have not gone back and listened to our free gift to you this week, and that was a brand new episode, each and every day this week, you have an entire month's worth of Industrial Water Week episodes available to you this week. And of course, we are celebrating with encore episodes with James McDonald's character, Detective H2O, and here is the case of the hard diagnosis.
Welcome to Dr. H2O, the case of hard diagnosis. Hilda Helen Oxidane, PhD, CWT, sat in her immaculately white laboratory studying the results of her latest scale inhibition analysis of a new polymer she had been developing. It looked promising. She jumped a little when her smartphone came to life in her lab coat pocket. Ringing once, twice, no, only once. She was too efficient to waste time.
Hello, Dr. H2O here, the best water treater this side of the Ohio. Diagnosing water problems for a healthier system. How may I help you?
Wait a minute. Doesn't your father, Detective H2O, say the exact same thing? How can you both be the best water treater this side of the Ohio?
We live on opposite sides of the Ohio River. Now that we've gotten that cleared up, how may I help you?
Well, Doc, this is Danny. Down at Waterton Food and Beverage, our softener is sick.
What are the symptoms?
She's not getting a full run. She produces hard water long before she should. We need your services, Doc. We heard you make house calls.
Oh yes, I make house calls, powerhouse calls. I will be over shortly.
Dr. H2O arrived at Waterton Food and Beverage in her white late-model Mercedes. She removed her black test bag from the trunk, checked in with the front gate guards, and made her way to the powerhouse. On her way to see Danny, the powerhouse superintendent, she stopped briefly to peruse the powerhouse logbook. She saw several notes of the water softeners producing hard water prematurely with the units manually placed into regeneration. There was definitely a problem here.
Doc, you made it. Glad to see you.
You too, Danny. Let's take a look at this water softener of yours.
Making their way down the stairs to the powerhouse basement, the water softener loomed before them.
She's actually 2 twin alternating softeners, but we see her as one large piece of equipment.
If you don't mind me asking, do you refer to all of your water treatment unit operations using feminine pronouns?
Oh no, that RO over there is a he. We're an equal opportunity offender here.
He chuckled.
I see.
Smiled the water doctor. Dr. H2O reviewed the water treatment logs, observing.
So both water softener tanks are exhibiting premature hardness breakthrough at approximately the same time. That means the likely cause is common to both of them and not a mechanical issue on an individual unit itself. Let's start at the beginning though, by doing an analysis of the incoming city water. I want to know if anything has changed.
Opening her black bag, she extracted her water testing supplies and started running her analysis on the city water. Comparing it to her notes from previous Waterton city water analysis, she observed.
Nothing has changed significantly with the city water. Total hardness, pH, iron, etc. All are basically the same. The free chlorine is higher than many areas around the city, at greater than 1 ppm, but still within the city's control parameters. By my calculations, your water softener is producing only 85% of the designed softening capacity and dropping.
Wow, Doc. I told you she was sick.
Yes, our next step is to manually place the online softener vessel into regeneration. Observe the steps and perform an elution study to ensure proper brine concentrations are being reached.
Dr. H2O stood beside the softener drain line that opened to the floor drain as Danny opened the control box and initiated a manual regeneration. Valves opened and closed, the standby softener unit came online, and the online unit went into regeneration. The first step was a backwash to expand the resin bed and remove any debris or broken beads.
On a smaller unit, I could use a bucket to measure the flow rates out of the softener during each regeneration step to ensure they meet manufacturer specifications or industry standards. With flow as large as this where that is impossible, one must fall back upon observations instead of absolute accuracy.
While the backwash continued, Dr. H2O inspected the brine tank and tested its level of saturation with her sodium chloride salometer. It was 100% saturated, as it should have been. She also measured the brine tank diameter and brine depth. The backwash went through its entire cycle as expected for as long as expected. No cause for malady so far. With a salometer and graduated cylinder in hand, when the brine cycle started, Dr. H2O started recording the salinity of the water every 3 minutes.
Some people like to measure every 5 minutes, but I find I get a much more detailed elution curve every 3 minutes. Sometimes the enhanced data resolution helps.
At the end of the brine cycle, the slow rinse cycle started. Dr. H2O measured the brine depth again while keeping an eye on the slow rinse cycle flow and duration. Lastly, the fast rinse cycle started and she observed and timed as well. Plotting the salometer data points on her tablet computer, Danny watched over her shoulder and asked,
Well, did you find anything?
No, This is a textbook example of what an elution curve should be. It shows just over 30 kilometer degrees for 30 minutes per industry standards. I calculated the brine usage from the change in the brine tank level, and that is perfectly within industry standards as well. So far, we have a healthy specimen. Let me take a closer look at the floor drain area.
Using the flashlight setting on her smartphone, Dr. H2O made a close inspection of the floor drain.
Do you see this, Danny?
See what, Doc?
These little broken resin beads. There aren't many, but there are a few. You don't have a resin trap installed, I see, which could have been helpful. I think it is time for a surgical approach. Let's open the standby softener up. With the other unit online, we have several hours before that one is due for regeneration.
Sure, whatever you say, Doc.
Relieving the water pressure on the standby softener, Danny opened the top maintenance hole on the softener vessel. After inspecting the latter, Dr. H2O climbed up and took a look. The surface of the resin bed was relatively even, no obvious signs of uneven flow or channeling. The surface also looked clean and free of debris. Next, she measured how far the resin bed started from the top of the vessel and marked this level on the side of the unit. There were no previous markings, so it was not possible to see if there had been any change.
What do you see up there, Dr. H2O?
So far, so good. Now to take a core resin sample.
Improvising a resin thief with PVC piping, she drove it into the resin bed and obtained the best representative sample that she could. Pulling out her magnifying glass, she took a look at the resin.
The color looks typical, although without a sample of the original resin, it's hard to tell what color it truly was originally. I do see some broken beads in here,
the doctor observed. Then she placed some resin beads between her fingers and began to rub them around.
Danny, come here, stat!
What's up, Doc?
Asked Danny as he came running.
Watch this,
replied Dr. H2O as she rubbed more resin beads between her fingers.
They disintegrated. That's weird. What's happening here?
We made our diagnosis, Danny. That's what's happening. Your resin is breaking down due to the over 1 ppm free chlorine in your incoming city water. The chlorine attacks the polystyrene cross-linking in the resin beads, causing its moisture content to rise and the beads to swell. The beads start to break and get washed out with the backwash, reducing overall capacity. I prescribe replacing the resin as soon as possible.
I see. Is there anything we can do to prevent the new resin from degrading the same way?
That's a great question. While there's really no such thing as a chlorine-resistant softener resin, you can get resins with higher cross-linkings that will withstand the chlorine oxidation for longer periods of time. You could also install dechlorination technology upstream of the water softener, such as a carbon filter. I'll work up a report on a few options.
Our softeners will be on the mend running at full capacity soon because of you. Thanks, Dr. H2O.
Dusting off her white lab coat and picking up her black testing bag, Dr. H2O replied,
It's all in a day's work, Danny. Healing water treatment problems is in my blood.
In industrial plants across sprawling Waterton, where boilers get upset and cooling towers operate at fever pitch, one woman has made it her calling to diagnose their ills to soothe corrosion, mitigate scale, disinfect microbes, and save water drop by drop. That woman is Dr. H2O, best water treater this side of the Ohio, one doctor that still makes house calls, powerhouse calls.
Well, James, thank you for helping us have a well-deserved holiday. Thank you for all your Detective H2Os. Thank you for allowing me to be part of Detective H2O. And Scaling Up Nation, if you don't know it, you are in the best career out there. I hope you're taking advantage of it. I hope you're talking to your customers. I hope you are getting tours of their plants. I'm hoping that you are learning something new each and every day. I hope that you're making a mistake because you're trying something new and you're learning from that mistake. And most of all, I hope that the Scaling Up H2O podcast is part of your regular routine. Happy Industrial Water Week, Scaling Up Nation. We are going to be celebrating all year with a brand new episode each and every Friday, but you're going to have to wait until October 6th of 2025 next year to celebrate Industrial Water Week. Until then, have a great rest of your week. Happy Careers Friday, and thank you for being part of the Scaling Up Nation.